was a very deep, interesting reading month. Like these 3 books. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Joyce, and today we are talking about the books that I read in the month of September. And let's just say it was an interesting reading month for me. So a lot of books I did already talk about in various reading vlogs. I will go ahead and link those videos so you can see a more in-depth review of the books that I am going to just briefly graze over. So in the month of September, I did read 9 books and I DNF'd 1. That book was titled Unplanned. I actually read this book on Kindle while I was trying out the app for free for 30 days, and it starts out really good, and I was really hopeful where the book was going. I like how it starts out very strong, exploring different things that women will accept and agree to in a relationship, knowing that's not what you want, you know, having to be okay with an open relationship even if you are not. Our main character, she gets pregnant, and the dad is like, that is something we agreed that we would not do. That is not in the cards for us. So our main character is just kind of like, well, I'm not asking you to be. I know what we agreed upon, and she just makes a choice that she's going to have the baby and raise the baby by herself. That is a book I could possibly see myself picking back up. I just wasn't in the mood because she ends up making like a pregnancy bucket list of all these things she wants to do before she has the baby. It just got kind of boring. It got boring, and there were just so many other books that I was itching to get to. I felt like, let me not force myself to read this. If you are not new here, you know that is something I will not do. If you finished it, you know, if she had a happy ending, let me know in the comments down below. But we are moving on. Now, these books are not necessarily in order. No, they are, with the exception of this first one. So I want to talk about this first book because I just could not wait to talk about this book with you guys. But once we get that book out the way, they will go in order from my least favorite to my favorite book of this month. So the next book that I want to talk about is Never Lie by Freida McFadden. I'm at a loss for words with this trash. No, I'm kidding. It was not a trash book. I would never just like say that about somebody's work of art. But okay, this book was not trash. It was not. I was really just kidding. This book was just slightly irritating. The plot twist comes from left field. You're not gonna see it happening because the way that Freida wrote the book, you have your eye on someone else the whole time, or all these other people, when you should really have your eye on this other person. And by the time the plot twist comes, you feel like, you know what? Let me go back and read the beginning of the book because maybe it was just me. It's not just you. The way the book was written, it was intended for us to be completely thrown off, and it was just weird. I still had a great time, okay? I still had an absolute great time. Overall, this is probably still somewhere between like a 3.5 and a 4-star book. This is a very good thriller to read in the winter. If your fall TBR is too full, you can definitely push this back to the winter. It's definitely giving winter vibes if you're like a vibes reader. I absolutely love that there is so much suspense created around how this therapist disappeared. There's so many different people introduced that could have did something to this lady. Was she murdered, or did she do something and then she just decided to disappear? You don't really know. So it's a lot to work with in the book. Plot twist is just, it's done poorly. That's the best thing I can say, is that the plot twist, it is done poorly, and that's just that. So, and I have so many more thoughts, so many more things I want to say and share. I just want to go off. But anyway, we're moving on. My least favorite book of this month was People Person. You just go into this book thinking it's not going to be what it was about. I think that this book is for a very targeted audience. I love books written by Black authors because I can relate to the environment or the characters or the ambiance in some way. Like there was a time where they walked into a house and people were playing dominoes. There are people I know that could relate to this book all the way through. I didn't have a deadbeat dad. I actually had an extra dad, so I don't relate. However, I know a lot of people who have. In the Black community, you at least know someone who their father probably wasn't in their life. So I appreciate the author telling this story. I also appreciate getting his perspective, and I also appreciate seeing what it does to children when their father is not in their life. For some people, it creates a level of resilience in them, and other people, it creates a level of insecurities in them, and you get to see all of that explored. I think I rated it like a 3. It's a book that I would only recommend to very specific people if I feel like the story would resonate with them. I actually listened to this book on Audible and I loved the experience. I ended up getting the book from the library for free because I wanted to be able to read it in moments when I wasn't busy. I listened to a lot of it at work, but when I was at home or just chilling, I wanted to read the actual physical copy. The only character I was able to relate to just a little bit was the oldest of the half siblings, which is Nikisha. She felt it was her responsibility to make sure she kept them intact, make sure she cleaned up the messes. A lot of times as the older sibling, that is what we believe our role is. That's the role you're pushed and forced into, and you embody that role for forever. It was a good book, but like I said, of all the books I read, this was my least favorite. Moving on to the next least favorite on the list. I don't even have the physical copy anymore. I also got this book from the library, and I didn't actually read it in September. I read it a couple of months ago, and I haven't been doing wrap-ups because I've been doing a lot of reading vlogs, and so I felt like I wanted to talk about it in this wrap-up because this is a good book to add to your fall TBR if you are a fiction reader like me, where it's just women's fiction or literary fiction, doesn't have to be romance and all that. And the name of this book is The Collected Regrets of Clover. So this book follows our main character, who is a death doula, which I didn't even know that was a job. That's one thing I love about reading. I get to learn and explore about all these different jobs that I didn't even know were out there. So her job is really cool. She basically is called in to help people transition. She's very comfortable with death. She's very good at her job. She's not so good at living. So it's really cool that she gets to finally realize that. She goes on like a journey where we get to see her start to live, where she makes friends. She even gets the opportunity to meet a guy. So there is a subplot of romance if you're into that. And I thought it was a really good book. This book I also rated like it could be anywhere between a 3.5, 4. I hate giving books rating. I really do, because I feel like sometimes when you rate a book a 3 or less than a 4, people just feel like, oh, I'm not going to read it. And that is not the case. 3-star books are still really good books. It's just that maybe it didn't leave enough impact on me, or maybe I can't recommend it, or, I enjoyed my time while reading it, but now it's done. 4 and 5s is different. I'm always talking about it. There's so much that's left with me. There was a feeling I got while I was reading it, and so that's why they're rated higher. But yeah, I thought it was a good book. If you're into, like I said, literary fiction, and if it sounds like a good book that you want to add to your fall TBR, then go ahead and do so. Okay, so the next book I did already talk about in a previous reading vlog, and it is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Absolutely loved all the police procedure stuff, learning about the process of a missing person. If you do want to read this book, I would say definitely do the audio version. I loved Pip's dad. I love that he is a Nigerian character that is a part of the story. He's not just a prop or just thrown in there. A lot of times you'll see non-black authors just throw in someone black and it's not organic. It doesn't feel like it fits, or they just make a quick statement and you never see the character again. Pip's dad was a part of the story, very organic, very natural. I just loved his character. I loved Pip. That's really all I have to say about that book. If you want to hear a more in-depth review about that book, I will link the video and you can watch it there. All right, so the next book, I finally got through it, guys, and it is Mad Honey, and I am very glad that I read this book. It was heavy though. I didn't think it was going to be that heavy. I did not. What I did not like is you go into the book thinking it's going to be about one thing and it ends up being something. It's about that. It's about the woman who her son is being convicted of murdering his girlfriend. But then it's also about something else that I'm not going to share, just because I feel like if you want to read this book, you need to go into it blindly like I did, because when this truth is unveiled, it blows you away. So what I didn't like about the book was a lot of unnecessary flashbacks, both from Lily and Olivia. So Olivia was a battered woman. Our author did a fantastic job of making us understand that. Okay. But there were just some moments where I wanted her to continue the course of the story and she would interrupt it and take us back to like her past. And I felt like sometimes that wasn't necessary. The amount of courtroom in this book, I loved. Absolutely love. If you love police stuff, courtroom stuff, you get a lot of that in this book. It's so good, to the point where they're even explaining to you what reasonable doubt is and how you make that possible, whether you're telling the truth or not. Oh, I eat that stuff up. So once Lily was able to share her truth in the book, there was so many moments and stories that were being shared to me that weren't really necessary. Now, They probably just didn't resonate with me. So Lily is walking through life with a heavy secret. When she finally is able to share that secret, it is explored heavily in the book. Like, it's so many parts about her secret that were extremely interesting. And then there were a lot of parts where I just feel like we didn't need that. It was almost like you're reading two different books. They clearly intertwined them for a reason, because a book just written about Lily's story wouldn't have been read as much. But other than that, it's a very good book. It's a very powerful book. It's extremely heavy topics. Extremely. Definitely want to check trigger warnings. I think I gave this book like a 4 stars. It's thick, and she is a book that you can read at a slow pace. This is not a book you want to gobble up and read in a day or two. It's okay to read this book over the course of days, weeks, or even months, child. But we're moving on. So the next book that I read that was almost my favorite book of the month is The Midnight Library. I also talked about this in a different reading vlog. Very briefly, I just want to say it was a really good book. I do think it's a very powerful book. It's so easy to romanticize the life, the path, or choice you didn't take. And so this book puts it back into perspective that no matter what path or choice you take, there's both good and bad on the journey. And so I just think it's very relatable. As long as you're in a good space mentally, it's for everyone. At some point in all of our lives, we have had regrets. So yeah, I just thought it was relatable. I thought it was a good book. And like I said, I'll link the video for a more in-depth review. My battery is gonna die from my last book, so battery change. Be right back. Okay, so we're back. Hopefully things don't look too different. But this last book, it wasn't even a 5-star, but it had the biggest impact on me. I believe it's Suicide Awareness Month. So yes, in the month of September, it's a whole week dedicated to suicide awareness. And it's also like Suicide Awareness Month. And I think that's so crazy because I read 3 books that either discussed or explored suicide, which was crazy. But anyway, this book obviously talks about it the most, and it is The Soulmate. There's a cliff that people go to end their life. And our main characters have a house near this cliff. So listen, this book was really good. It should be rated so much higher right now on good reason. These authors write these books, they go into it with a target audience in mind. They have a story that they want to tell, and it isn't for everyone. So sometimes people pick up these books and it's not for you. And that's why I said even some of these other books, maybe I wasn't the target audience for that book. That's why I'm not gonna rate it so poorly and say it's trash and all that, because I see the beauty in it and I see the audience that they were trying to target. This, I'm their target audience, okay? I'm their target audience. They are trying to explore a diagnosis for one of the characters, and it's so crazy because I saw the diagnosis before the person even got it. They were diagnosed with something, and I'm like, I know somebody with that, and that doesn't really look like that. So yeah, I just thought that that was even beautiful. What the author was getting at, I already saw it coming. That's how I knew, like, oh God, I'm the target audience. If you've never known or loved or lived or experienced anybody that has a form of a mental illness, or even that's neurodiverse, you probably won't feel the same way that I did. It's a story about relationships and the good and bad that goes on in relationships. That's why it's also so important to read the author's notes. They will sometimes tell you that was the purpose why they were writing the book. And this one was a group of wives who had a text thread, and they were just talking little smart remarks about their husband. And then it ended up morphing into something bigger, which is obviously the story. It was just so much I can talk about. I can review this book just on its own. But anyway, there's a moment in the book where our character realizes that she is so intertwined with her husband that she feels like they are literally one and the same. Something is able to happen and she feels like she can finally breathe. The parts that really hit me, I cried, like sobbed at the end of this book. Was I in therapy or what? You would have to read the book and see the dynamics and how the stories overlap, and oh, it was just so good. I'm having this reaction. I didn't even think it was a 5-star read. This is what I mean by you can't always go off of someone else's rating. You will gain a lot. If you are a wife, you will be able to see the highs and lows of like a marriage and sticking beside your person and knowing when to walk away, or if you should walk away, or having an actual soulmate. Some people believe in that, some people don't. And now I'm just like rambling, like I said, because I can go on and on. But anyway, it was such a beautiful reading month, as you can see. It was kind of deep. Like these 3 books. Listen, there's a lot of pain in this book. There's a lot of pain in this book. There's so much pain in this book. And then we just have a lot of lunatics in this one. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm so excited that I finally got to talk about these books with you guys, and I am looking forward to the books that I am going to read in October. If you enjoyed today's video, watch another, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.